David, Grace, and their daughter Zara were the picture of happiness. They lived in a beautiful home and shared a bond many families admired. David worked as a project manager for a large construction company. His job demanded long hours and frequent meetings. Grace was also a successful professional. Every weekday, she left early and returned home late. Their daughter Zara attended one of the best schools in the city. Life was good, but because both parents worked full time, they needed someone trustworthy to help manage the home. That decision would change their lives forever. After weeks of searching, they hired a young woman named Ruth. At first, Ruth seemed like the perfect choice. She was respectful, she was hardworking, she was always smiling. Within weeks, she became part of the family. Grace treated Ruth with kindness. Whenever she went shopping, she bought clothes for Ruth. She made sure Ruth had everything she needed. Ruth even had her own room. She ate the same meals as the family. She sat on their dining table. She received her salary on time every month. For the first time in years, David and Grace felt they could finally relax. As months passed by, the family's trust in Ruth continued to grow. Whenever groceries were needed, Grace simply handed her ATM over to Ruth. Soon, Ruth knew the card PIN. Nobody thought it was a problem. After all, Ruth had given Ruth had never given them any reason to doubt her. Every market trip suddenly became an opportunity. While withdrawing money, Ruth secretly checked the account balances. Week after week, she noticed something. The family was wealthy, very, very wealthy, and little by little, greed began growing inside her heart. What started as curiosity slowly turned into envy. Ruth began comparing her life to theirs. Why did they have everything? Why was she struggling? Why couldn't that money belong to her? Those thoughts became stronger every single day. Instead of appreciating the kindness she received, she began focusing on what she didn't have. Soon, she started planning something terrible, something that could destroy an entire family. One evening, while alone in her room, Ruth made a decision. She would steal from the family, not a small amount, everything. She believed that if the family disappeared from her life, she could escape with their ATM cards and money. She spent days planning, days imagining her future in another state, days convincing herself she deserved what belongs to someone else. And finally, she chose a date Sunday. That Sunday seemed completely normal. The family attended church, they laughed together, they took pictures, everything looked perfect. Back home, Ruth prepared a special meal. The dining table looked beautiful. Nobody suspected a thing. Inside her room, her bags were already packed. She was prepared to leave immediately after her plan succeeded. All she needed was for the family to eat. Just as everyone gathered around the dining table, David's phone rang. It was an urgent call from work. A serious problem had developed at one of his project sites. He needed to leave immediately. David apologized and promised to return quickly. After he left, Grace and Zara looked at each other. They had a family tradition. No one started dinner without everyone being present, so they decided to wait. That simple decision would save their lives. While waiting, Grace looked through the window. Outside the gates sat an elderly man who often begged in the neighborhood. Feeling compassionate, she packed a portion of the meal. She carried it outside and handed it to him. The old man thanked her warmly. Grace smiled and returned inside. She had no idea what had just happened. Not long afterwards, people outside began calling for help. Grace rushed outside. The elderly man had suddenly become ill. Neighbors gathered around. An ambulance was called immediately. Grace accompanied him to the hospital. Zara stayed with a family friend while Grace contacted David. David rushed straight from work to the hospital. Hours later, the doctor arrived with shocking information. The man had consumed a harmful substance through food, the doctor said. Fortunately, he had received treatment quickly and would recover. David and Grace stared at each other in disbelief. Then David asked a simple question. Where did the food come from? Grace froze. The dining table. Suddenly, everything became clear. The family returned home immediately. Ruth was surprised to see them back so soon. She expected them to be having dinner. Instead, they walked inside with serious expressions. David began asking questions. At first, Ruth denied everything. She insisted she had done nothing wrong. Grace couldn't understand it. How could someone they trusted so deeply betray them? As the questioning continued, Ruth became nervous. Her answers no longer made sense. Eventually, evidence and contradictions exposed her lies. The truth began to surface. The woman they had treated like family had secretly planned to destroy everything they had built. David immediately contacted the police. An investigation began. Meanwhile, the remaining food was tested. The results confirmed everyone's worst fears. Before the authorities completed their investigation, Ruth consumed some of the same food she had prepared. Soon afterwards, she became seriously ill. She was rushed to the hospital. Doctors worked hard to save her. David and Grace watched silently. Their hearts were filled with sadness rather than anger. Despite everything she had done, they never wished harm upon her. At the hospital, Ruth finally broke down. Tears filled her eyes. She admitted everything. She confessed that greed had blinded her. She apologized repeatedly. She begged for forgiveness. Grace stood beside her bed and listened quietly. The same woman who had shown Ruth kindness from the very beginning now stood there heartbroken, not because of money, not because of the betrayal, but because a life had been destroyed by greed. Despite medical efforts, Ruth did not survive. Weeks later, life slowly returned to normal. The elderly man recovered fully. David and Grace became even more grateful for the gift of family. Every evening, they gathered around the dining table together, and each time they did, they remembered how close they had come to losing everything they had. They also remembered an important lesson: trust is precious, kindness should never be abused, and greed can destroy a person long before consequences ever arrive. The family moved forward stronger than before, not because they escaped tragedy, but because they chose forgiveness over bitterness. And in the end, love won. Thank you for reading my story. Please like and subscribe and wait for the next one.